The Diluvian is the ultimate relic solo farming method. It's a dungeon where you take on predetermined hordes of monsters, getting more rewards the further you get. Additionally, it also gives you really fast bestiary, just because of the sheer volume of stuff you're killing. And this video will show you everything you need to know to conquer the Diluvian, whether you're looking for relics or just to complete your first wave 50. In order to do that, I'll be showing you every single meta build in the game, yes, every last one, as well as information you'll need to know for all of the attunements and oaths, that way you can pick the most optimal build for you. Then I'll be going over the optimal relic farming method, as well as strategies or even cheeses to clear some of the waves. So if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, make sure to like and subscribe and join the Discord for the build maker links. A huge thank you to my channel members, especially those kind souls in the mega and super tiers. They get these videos early along with other channel member perks. Starting off with the big question, wave 25 versus wave 50. Both of these waves provide you chests that can drop relics. However, wave 50 is largely pointless. In my prog, I said that a wave 50 would take you about 50 minutes, just based off videos that I found. However, this is inaccurate once you start to get really good with the Diluvian, as the world record currently sits at a new 21 minutes, using a modified version of Seraph Soul. However, because wave 50 on this scale requires a good RNG run, the average person with an average level of skill can probably top out at about 30 minutes per wave 50, which is pretty generous, but it'll make the math easy, because it just means that you clear 2 wave 50s and 2 wave 25s per hour, or about 10 wave 50 chests and 10 wave 25 ones. However, wave 25 is far easier, because you get an average clear time of about 4 minutes, which leads to you getting 75 wave 25 chests per hour. As wave 25 has a lower barrier and it's harder to wipe, this is very optimal for newer players or long-term grinding sessions. The thing with wave 50 chests is they seem to be very weighted towards certain relics, with all the data I collected mainly showing idols, armorers, and smiths alloys, with a rare Sinner's Ash and even rarer Moon's Eye Tome. However, wave 25 seems a lot more evenly distributed, with an hour-long test providing an even amount of armorers and Moon's Eyes for me. So this means that if you're actually looking to farm relics, then wave 25 is better. If you want enchant stones from wave 50, then just go do Etheron. For Pathfinders, you can easily just trade or do Hell mode, or just wave 25s. However, you can't get Tidekeeper from anywhere else, so maybe it is worth doing a couple wave 50s. With the optimal method for farming relics out of the way, I'm going to absolutely blast through the first section of builds. However, we do need to get through some general info before that, just so I can avoid questions. The stat order for all of the builds will be on screen like this. The post shrine doesn't matter, since you can just get knowledge from Etheron, Ferryman, or just pop a Moon's Eye. You just replace attunement with the attunement that you're going, and then you replace attunement 2 if applicable with the second lowest attunement, and so on. For starters, there's 3 armors you can pick from. The Ignition Deep Delver set, which gives you good resistances and the ability to parry perilous attacks, which encompasses almost everything but a couple of bugged attacks. Next, you have the Tide Knight schematic, which allows you to become unknockable if you take a certain amount of damage, also providing you a general damage and defense buff. However, I wouldn't rely on Tide Knight, since you don't want to start trying to take too much damage. And finally, we have Prophet's Cloak. This allows you to gain a lot more Mantra Pen and is the offensive option. It's personally what I chose to run when farming wave 25s to get the most time, as every monster in the game has some form of armor. For your enchants, you'll be using Seer for Mantra Pen, as on something like an Iron Spear with a Trident Spear critical, you can get a ton of extra damage after you cast all your mantras. Alternatively, you can use Providence Thorns, just to deal damage to golems or owls, since they have high multi-hit attacks. As Providence Thorns is a passive effect, while Seer is an active effect, Providence Thorns is a little easier and more beginner friendly to use in my opinion, but either of these work. However, if you do have any sort of weapon investment, then using Wild on a Pale Briar or an Enforcer's Axe will net you the most damage, as Wild will deal an extra 85% damage if you're attacking multiple targets, meaning that it's very strong. For your weapons, you'll either be using a Battle Axe with the Providence Thorns, an Iron Spear with the Trident Spear crit for Seer, or use this if you're running Iron Sing, since criticals are very important for that attunement, and you'll be using a Pale Briar or an Enforcer's Axe for M1 builds. However, if you're just planning to do wave 25, then you can just use a Divine Weapon, as these give you the most damage in the game. Pale Briar passively attacks even if you're being damaged and has good AoE, and Enforcer's Axe is great for guard breaking humanoids. I'll have all of the mantra mods on screen, just pause. And for your Bell, you'll be running a Sacred Field if you're a mage, or Payback for damage. However, if you're an M1 build, you can run crazy slots for a lot of extra damage. But I think most people will find Sacred or Payback to be a lot more defensive. Your equipment is pretty simple. You use a Ring of Casters on a mage, a Diver's Ring for 5% DVM, an Ishan's Ring for 10% more damage, and then either a Pathfinder Elite for the 5% innate DVM, or an Enforcer's Plate. This gives you the Berserker talent, which allows us to save a lot of points on some builds, and still keeps them very defensive. Then for your helmet, you'll be using a Deep Scorn Casque if you're using Rush Hour, a Parasol Planter if you're using Flame Within, or a Silver Knight's Helm if you have neither. Alright, finally time for the builds. I'll talk about all the attunements and mantras after. To blast through the repeat ones, we have the basic Mage with 80 attunement. You'll either run 60 Intelligence or Perfect Flash, and Successor Prediction. However, Perfect Flash has uptime issues, but Successor Prediction is very good for Golems and Owls, or you'll be running 60 Blood Rend for Rush Hour and Blood Transfusion. Rush Hour buffs your mantras by 15%, and Blood Transfusion allows you to get rid of the no mantra status, which Intelligence gets through Water Off a Duck's Back. Then you have the Hybrid Mages with Pale Briar and 80 of the attunement. This gets you the best of M1s and mantras, and the build gets slightly better with Khan. However, with the bug being back in the game, you can actually pre-shrine your Pale Briar. This is the first of the new builds, by the way. Pre-shrining your Pale Briar allows you to get a very good M1 option. What you'll do when you equip it is you'll try to mastery the weapon equip down from 85 to 82, and then if you have Khan, you can equip it with as low as 79 at the end. Then you'll Shrine of Order. The main line of thinking that you'll need to adopt with a pre-shrine Pale Briar is that it's a damage supplement and add-on and not a main source of damage. So cast your mantras and then Pale Briar crit. This build pairs especially well with Iron Sing. Then we've got the dual attunement mages. I covered these last time, they just have a bigger mantra pool. I didn't include every possible combination, just the combinations that actually have unique interactions. Then we have the dual attunement mage with the pre-shrine Pale Briar. This was actually the build that I progged before I decided on Abyss Dweller. It was a very strong build, I just wanted to try something else out. Having Khan on this build does allow you to get Carnivore, but even if you don't, you can still get a very good build. You get a big mantra pool and an option of M1s. Then we have the Tri-Attunement Mages. As people get better and better with the Diluvian, we'll optimize for trading as much defense as possible for damage. And Tri-Attunement just gives you the biggest mantra pool before you're kinda just wasting your time, and is what Abyss Dweller does. It takes 50 Blood Rend just to buff up all of our mantras, and then a bunch of good supporting attunements. The Abyss Dweller primarily went Frost Draw and Iron Sing, however it went Steam as well, just to get a little bit more of a buff. And then we have the final three. We have a Saintsworn Diluvian, because why not, it's every attunement. I wouldn't overly recommend this, but for just wave 25 it does have some potential, mainly in the fact that it can proc armor sets like the Shock Trooper and talents like Dark Hours, since it converts your mantra type damage into a certain element. Then we have the pure M1 build, most notably Seraph Soul V3. Yes, Seraph Soul can be slightly improved by abusing Enforcer's Plate. You easily get to max damage mods with this, as well as getting some good quality of life from Charisma. However, Seraph Soul V2 is still strong, don't get me wrong. And then, just because, here is a Silent Heart Diluvian. I wouldn't overly recommend Silent Heart, but if you want a good cross between PvE and PvP, then this does work. Now we get into the section where I'm going to rank the various oaths and attunements you can use, just so you know what build to actually pick. For the oath, Silent Heart is F-. You have no mantras, which means you have very little buffs, and you can't use attunements, which is just not very good for a game mode like PvE where numbers matter a lot. D is all of these oaths. They're not necessarily bad, they just don't have any particularly good synergies with PvE. So I wouldn't recommend recommend them over choosing other options. Arc Water is C tier. While in the Arc Suit you get a good damage reduction and can't be posture broken once. The only issue with Arc Water is it doesn't have the best uptime on the Arc Suit, therefore it's not as good as some of the other oaths. In C tier is also Oathless. This is splashable on any build in the game, giving you a little bit of HP, as well as some mantra resistance, which is very good for the Dawnwalker NPCs later in Diluvian, as their Blinding Dawn can really hurt. And being an Oathless, you just naturally have some resistance to it. B tier is Soulbreaker. This just gives you a low invest way to get Ardor Scream, since you'll passively meet requirements with Brick Wall. It's pretty good for M1 builds and mages, but there is a few things that I think can be better. Dawnwalker is A tier. This used to be the best oath in the game, however, post the buff of the #1 oath, it's fallen a little bit. Blinding Dawn has good AoE and damage, and Radiant Dawn is a near uncancelable mantra that does incredible damage, and can guard break NPCs, leading into good follow-ups. Extremely strong oath, but I believe S tier's Blind Seer trumps it. Blind Seer is the best PvE oath in the game right now. Sightless Beam does absolutely insane damage, and can't be cancelled once it's fully casted. Not to mention you also get Tranquil Circle, which makes you take less damage while in it. It's a very good mantra for M1 builds. Overall, I really recommend Blind Seer for Diluvian, as its damage is just insane, and you passively meet the requirements with Brick Wall. Moving on to the attunement rankings, I will be ranking the attunements based on their clear times alone, along with their other interactions with different attunements as well, especially since we're moving towards a meta where multi-attunements are a lot more common in the Diluvian. Bloodrend is D tier. It's not quite F tier because it does have Rush Hour and Blood Transfusion, which are very good talents, but they're supporting ones. Its mantras just aren't very good. Along with it is Thundercall. It's a good supporting attunement, but it doesn't have very good mantras. Its one saving grace from being worse than Bloodrend is the fact that it does have some pretty good talents, like Second Interrogation. Shadow is C tier. You get an insane amount of burst damage from Eclipse Kick, plus you have talents like Dark Hours, which are constantly buffing your Shadowcast mantras. Not to mention you also have Shade Devour to buff your M1s by 25%. Its only issue is it doesn't have many good talents, and it only really has 2 strong mantras. B tier is Gale Breath. It has probably the best mantra pool in the game, having a lot of really strong options. Good talents like Aftercut and Inhale, which can provide 5 or even 10% extra damage, and it has really nice mobility through Wind Passage. The main downside is this attunement doesn't have defense, unlike some of the higher entries. A tier is Flame Charm. It has really strong mantras like Flame Sentinel and Relentless Flames, as well as quick casts like Burning Servants. Not to mention, it does have a lot of healing from Flame Wisp, which healing actually isn't something often covered by attunements. It even has some mobility in Flame Assault. However, I don't think Flame Charm quite matches the damage or versatility of the next two. Speaking of, in low S tier we have Iron Sing. This is the singular best attunement in the game. It has really high damage, great defense, and the only thing it's really lacking is mobility, but you don't need that for Diluvian. I will warn you, Iron Sing is currently bugged. When they changed how bleed works, that also kinda gutted Iron Sing. I have confirmed this wasn't intentional, and it will likely be fixed in the next weekly. So use Iron Sing now at your own risk, because until a week after this video it is gonna be nerfed. However, Iron Sing isn't the best attunement in the game, because that goes to Frostdraw. I said Iron Sing was the singular best attunement. Well, Frostdraw is the best dual attunement, or tri-attunement, because it's just so splashable into many different things. It has great passive damage through stuff like Ice Lock and Warden's Blades, good close range options in Frozen Servants, and even defense options like Orbital Ice, although this will break pretty quickly. It doesn't have mobility either, which kinda sucks. But like I said, what makes Frostdraw so good is how it pairs well with literally every attunement in the game, even having dual attunement path stuff in Flame Charm, having both Volcanic and Steam. If you're wondering, Steam is currently better due to the temp shock nerfs. So yeah, while alone Iron Sing is the best, when you're pairing it with other stuff, Frostdraw is the best attunement in the game, and is just incredibly versatile. Use this tier list to pick what build you run, but in the end, just have fun with whatever you play. That's what what I can recommend above all else. Now for some strategies or even cheese strats for the waves. The first is standing under the mechanism. By standing here, you can avoid being launched up by threshers or stone knights, allowing you to quickly group things up as well since you're in the dead center and kill them really fast. Standing under here isn't the fastest strat for all the waves, but it's certainly very easy and lets you turn your brain off. Next, you want to try to spam uppercuts and your mantras as much as possible. While you're in the air, a lot of attacks honestly just can't hit you. So if you do something like uppercut into Warden's Blades or Relentless Flames, then you can get a ton of free damage. This strategy works especially well against stuff like Founders. If you time it right, you can even uppercut into Sightless Beam, which gets you an insane amount of free damage. Next, for wave 31, when you hear the Gigamed roar, you want to try to vent. If you time it right, you'll health pack off the minions that it spawns in, allowing you to fully regen in that wave. And with how common people wipe on wave 31 due to the amount of stun, it's a really powerful tech to use since you can vent at any time. If you're running one of the builds with 60 blood rend or over 50 intelligence, then you can either crit or vent to remove the no mantra status in the 2 waves it appears. This just allows mages to act during them. However, if you don't have either of these options, then during the downtime you get between some of the waves, you want to equip a Detonation Avenger. Just because the AoE on the explosion means that you'll posture break stuff really fast, leading to a lot more damage. You can also sort of get around the no mantra waves by just pre-casting your mantras. However, this won't always work and isn't always an option on some builds. This is everything you need to know to clear the Diluvian mechanism. It has somehow remained the easiest way to farm lots of relics, especially as a new player, and is still an insane way to grind bestiary. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and join the Discord for the build picker links. A huge thank you to my channel members, especially those kind souls in the Mega and Super tiers. They get these videos early along with other channel member perks. Check out some more PvE content, and I'll see you all next time.